Warning, this podcast contains heavy spoilers for not just one movie, but entire franchises. We highly recommend going and watching these movies before listening to us as a companion piece that stitches all the timelines into one creepy, crime-ridden story. There will be no more spoiler warnings. We do not break character. After this, there is no turning back. You've been warned. Hit the music.
You are talking about the nonsensical ravings of a lunatic mind.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's
Hello and welcome to It's Alive podcast. This is a true crime, paranormal, interstellar podcast covering unbelievable stories that sound like they're ripped straight from the pages of a Hollywood script. I'm your host, the outlaw Dr. H.R. Smokenstein, THC. And with me as always is my very own Scream Queen, the perfect combination of beauty and brains, the bride of Smokenstein, the India hard expert of guts and gore, the gorgeous sexy Amy Rose.
Hi.
Amy, we are 89 seconds to midnight.
What does that mean?
You don't know what that means? You never heard of the doomsday clock?
Oh, yeah, no, I have.
I got curious, right? And I'm not going to go raging on like we have the last few weeks about politics. At this point, if you don't know, you should fucking know. You know, there's enough going on, and I think we said enough last week. But I was curious with Russia screaming nuke at UK, Israel screaming nuke at Iran, Pakistan screaming nuke at Israel, America whispering nuke at everybody.
Pakistan are going to...
Well, Iran have said that Pakistan claimed they'd bomb Israel with a nuke if they nuked Iran. So I got curious as to where we were with the midnight clock. Just to put it into context, right?
Is it the closest we've ever been? No. I think we've been 1 minute to midnight before.
Might be.
Oh.
I can see all past clocks here. Hang on 1 second. I can tell you. So, okay.
Where were we in World War II?
1945 is when they kicked this off.
Okay.
That was 7 minutes to midnight. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 7 minutes, 12 minutes. Oh, God, the 60s when it was 12 minutes to midnight. 10 minutes, 12 minutes in the 70s. We are fucking dangerously close. 4 minutes, 3 minutes in the 80s. 6 minutes around 88. So they knew I was around at that point. What was 87? It won't tell me. I can only hit the big points. 17 minutes in 1991. 1991 must have been a safe year.
Because I was born.
It is 1990. Oh, yeah, 1991 is the best we've had it in our lifetime.
Okay.
To put that into context, we've had in the last few years. So 2015 it was 3 minutes to midnight. 2017 it was 2.5 minutes. 2018 was 2 minutes. 2020 was 100 minutes. 2023 was 90 seconds to midnight. Now we are 89 seconds to midnight.
Oh, we've only got a second ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, it has rapidly, since 2015, been working its way down. Yeah. And that's just right now. I'd like to keep an eye on this and see where we go with it. See what happens. I wonder how they work all this out.
Oh, is that what the song's about? 2 minutes to midnight.
Oh, yeah. 2 minutes.
Did not know that. It's just after fucking with me. I thought you were just having a good night. Bad night.
No, we do not want to get to midnight.
No, we don't.
Otherwise,
does it have to be explosion or could it be anything? Could it be like a virus wiping us all out?
Yeah, I would assume 2020 it probably started to get closer because of the whole corona stuff. 100 seconds from 2 minutes. Yeah, it's not much. It was only 20 seconds in 2 years. So
yeah, still.
I don't know, man. All I'm hoping is, of all the nuke rumors, that the UK, for once, I hope the UK doesn't get nuked because that has to have some negative effect on us.
Depends on the side of the nuke. Trump is saying that he's going to have a nuke that will basically affect 1,500 miles radius once dropped. So they're hoping to have that in their arsenal in the next 10 years. So I don't know what a standard nuke can...
I don't know why Israel will be putting up doing this whole flapping their big dick around that we can get nukes. They're the size of Munster.
The size of Ireland, like.
Do you know what I mean? They drop one bomb there and bye-bye Israel. But probably bye-bye Palestine while they're at it.
Yeah.
And parts of Egypt.
Probably not drop a small nuke.
Mini nuke. Just a small one. Right in Netanyahu's house.
No, because Coward fled to Greece. I just think
they already bombed his house.
Once. Well, that's not surprising. But why leave your country? Why the fuck? I mean, like, what was it? A thing that he was running away? Is that what it was? It wasn't like a political kind of.
I don't know, because they're obviously meeting up all over the place now, trying to sort problems out and sort issues out before everybody blows up everybody else. Yeah. And the Irish are just sitting here drinking a pint of Guinness, going, "Sure, you know,
if it comes, you might as well just.
Tis grand. We'll be fine. Sure, we're neutral. We have nothing to do with this." All right, so last week we stepped outside the horrorverse.
We did.
This week we're back in the horrorverse, and we've spent the last few months now talking about religion, in particular Christian religion. So what's next?
We had a lot of conspiracy talk, like especially like the last 3 weeks, and I know that we have more conspiracy theories ready to spread, but I was thinking that this week we go for some good old-fashioned murder to cleanse the palate a little bit before you go all wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey on us.
Hint. All right, that's fair, but there are still some religious elements to this story, but it's ancient religion of the Egyptians and Sumerians at this time, so I mean, it doesn't play a big part in it. It's just more delusional religion.
Exactly, yeah.
Like the Christians.
But while ancient religion frames this story, it's really a tale of mental health issues, serial murder, and cannibalism.
Yum.
So let's get started with the tale of the cannibal chef, Fuad Ramses.
Yes.
So Fuad Ramses was born on July 27th, 1913 to parents Ammon and Dahlia, and was raised in Zagazig, Egypt for the first 15 years of his life.
Fair play, because I was even looking at the word and I was about to say zigzag. I'm just used to it from zig and zag as a kid. For anybody not from Ireland, UK would know this. Mm-hmm. There was two puppets that used to like host our kids' TV shows. They'd introduced the kids' TV shows. And there were two aliens from the planet Zog. There was Zig, Zag, and their puppy Zuppy. And
they were class. They kind of went through the ages with us, though. They were kind of on the teenage.
They did. They kind of went off the Irish kids stuff, went to the UK, and were a bit more edgy over there. From what I know, they were on Channel 4, so I think they were a little bit more edgy, more kind of teen based. And then they came over here and they started doing like 7 o'clock in the evening TV shows.
ID was the name of it, wasn't that?
Too Fat.
I thought it was ID.
No.
Or was ID later?
Too Fat, but the fat was spelled PH.
Oh, so cool.
Remember they used to have Velcro Girl? No. You don't remember Velcro Girl? Oh my God.
Was that a happy or was it?
Velcro Girl was hot.
Okay.
But it was, I can't remember. She was hot when she was on when I was like 12.
Oh.
Hang on.
I'm too young to remember it.
Velcro Girl was a part of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Hang on. Velcro Girl. And here she is. And basically, she'd come out with stuff stuck to her, and then they'd have to. I can't remember what the game was actually about. I
remember her. I don't know why I thought she was Podge and Raj though.
No. Same voices. That's why you're confused.
Yeah.
But Velcro Girl.
Who is she? Do we know her now? Like, is she a presenter?
Tracy Sheridan, apparently. I will tell you now if she's done anything else.
I feel like that's the name we've probably heard on radio.
I know the zigzag song is stuck in my head. Zigzagging around. Oh, this isn't her. Tracy Sheridan isn't her. Sorry, my bad. She was on This Time Around. That's it. I have no idea. It's her one credit. Will it give it to me here? No. She's just known as Velcro Girl from Too Fat in 1998. I was 11.
Oh, I was only 8. That's why I don't remember it.
Oh, she's Tracy Sheridan. Yeah, it's the right person. Irish model.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Good show. I got that from just hearing the word zigzag. Zagazig. And now for the rest of the night, I'm going to be singing their song. Zigzagging around.
I'm being honest, I don't remember the song.
What?
No, I don't remember the song. I remember Zig and Zag. I remember watching them, but I don't remember the song.
But I'm feeling down. Yeah, I love that.
Class, you have to sing it for me in full later.
No, I mean, I used to like get tapes and everything. And not the music tapes, but like when I went to Extravision and stuff like that, they'd have like little specials that they did. I think they were UK made kind of stuff, but it was them around their house and stuff like that. But it was all cartoon land kind of shit. But they were live action.
Oh, cool.
And they had a cartoon, I believe.
That seems familiar as well.
More recently, like when we were adults.
I think so.
Yes. Anyway, back to the Egyptians. Walk like an Egyptian. I can't say anything anymore without a song getting stuck in my head. Okay. So anyway, it's me, isn't it? Not you. So actually, we have something in common with the Egyptians here, right? Especially from this time period. They had a Brit problem too. With the English being at war with the Ottoman Empire, of which Egypt was a part, but also under British rule, or what they called, what was it again? Protectorate. So they weren't really under British rule, but still had to do what the British tell them.
So is that like when the US took over, well, they didn't take over, when the US went into Afghanistan and they got rid of the Taliban, and they were Afghanistan, but the US kind of mined them for a while? Or am I wrong there?
I think it's more along the lines of what Greenland deal with, if I'm right. I don't know. We're going to read into it here in a minute, but I think it's like, where Greenland can take care of its own, or like Ireland when we first got some bit of power back off England, where you could control your the domestic issues, but international issues went back to Britain. Do you know?
Oh,
like
so say
Norway
before the Act of Union in Ireland.
Yeah, the same way that Greenland takes care of their domestic issues, but Norway takes care of their international.
Okay.
Or Denmark.
One of them.
Denmark. My bad, Denmark. I just think Scandinavia and I'm off with Norway. Yeah. Denmark is the Danish.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what is a protectorate?
The British protectorates were protectorates under the jurisdiction of the British government. Many territories became British protectorates already had local rulers with whom the Crown negotiated through treaty, acknowledging their status while simultaneously offering protection. British protectorates were therefore governed by indirect rule. In most cases, the local ruler, as well as the subjects of the ruler, were not British subjects. British protected states represented a more loose form of British suzerainty.
Suzerainty?
Where the local rulers retained absolute control over the state's internal affairs, and the British exercised control over defence and foreign affairs.
This sounds an awful lot like the fucking mafia. You know, do as we say and we'll protect you.
Yes, a few euro.
In short, it's like when you make a child feel like they are being grown up and taking care of themselves, when really the parent is watching and manipulating everything to make sure the child does the right thing. Or what the British want them to do. And the right thing is basically whatever the parents' moral compass is going to be. So you're in power as long as what you do serve the British Empire best.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Exactly. Now, life in Egypt at this time was still very old-fashioned, traditional and pretty basic. Unfortunately, due to the time and lack of records from this time, it's hard to say what Fuad was like as a child. His wife, Louise, later said he didn't speak much about his childhood, but the little she had learned from his mother, Dahlia, was that Fuad was a quiet and shy child who spent his days working hard on the small family farm with his father. But due to the state of the world economy after World War I and the harsh conditions of farming in Egypt, the family were forced to abandon their land in 1928 when Fuad was 15, and like so many others at the time, set off across the shores in search of a second chance in the land of opportunity, America.
Maybe the land of opportunity, but not the land of equality, which Fuad found out pretty quickly. But despite the discrimination he suffered being a man of colour in a white world, he still managed to find employment in the service industry, working first as a dishwasher, then a server, then beginning an apprenticeship to become a cook. But even with career progressions, Fuad still struggled financially as he tried to provide for his family. Because his parents are old at this point, oldish, and you'd have to imagine living in Egypt, working hard. I mean, we were watching stuff there recently when they were doing the showing about the pyramids, and your man was looking into the idea of ancient aliens having something to do with the pyramids being built. So they showed him how the pyramids would be built. But we were watching when you were even saying it was like, that's them with their modern tools. So I can't imagine it was any easier back in the day. Here, these barefoot guys out in the heat just fucking chiseling away at these rocks. But that blew my
mind. Bare feet on the hot sand. That had to be hot.
Yeah. So you can imagine that his parents would have worked. Because I can imagine farming would be hard there. I know it's not the same farming as what we're doing. It's just whatever would be indigenous to their area, I suppose. What would be? You know a bit about Egypt, is it? What type of farming would they do?
Figs. I think chickpeas would be another one. I think the big challenge is actually irrigating the land from the Nile, even so you have farmable land.
So you'd have to build like a trench from the Nile down into your land to get the water down there and then have it spread out.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. That or what else are they going to farm? Fucking, we export sand.
I presume there's kind of dairy farmers as well and stuff like that. Crocodile farmers?
Huh?
No, I'm joking.
What you say?
Crocodile farmers.
Milk the crocodiles.
Crocodiles can't be milked because they don't got nipples.
Don't they?
No, they lay eggs.
How do they feed their babies? Are they meat eaters from the minute they get out? Like,
I don't know. It's a good question. Same way that birds, I would assume. Maybe they regurgitate.
Yeah, because birds don't have nipples either.
I've never seen a bird with nipples.
I just assumed everyone had nipples.
No, a platypus is technically... It lays eggs and it produces milk, but it doesn't have nipples.
So where does the milk go?
So they just kind of let the milk kind of seep out through glands, and the baby
So they
just kind of
sweat
lay
milk.
there. Yeah, technically, I suppose if you want to, they sweat milk and the babies just kind of lie there licking it.
Good way to lose weight while you're getting off that baby weight, you know? Anyway, Fuad's father had like a multitude, old man problems. He's crippled, his back is broke, his knees are fucked. It's just a kind of an amalgamation of problems. But it stops him from being able to find decent work, because the man could work a day and then be crippled for a month, you know? So he's at home and they're all living in this shitty little apartment together. So it's Fuad, his mom, his dad. I believe he's an only child. So that's still not much, I suppose, in that time, it would have been a big deal. And you're kind of around depression times here as well, aren't you? You're coming out of World War One. That's the depression, isn't it?
Yeah, you're coming into, everything is pretty
unstable. So you're moving to America, probably the worst time outside of now. and to find work and to build a life for yourself. And the bills are just mounting up constantly behind them. So it's like one of those things where you just can't get ahead of yourself,
Yeah.
Thankfully, though, it wasn't all bad. Fuad met his wife Louise at work in 1939. Fuad was 26, she was 21, and she was a server.
Okay.
And from there, they started to date, eventually leading to marriage.
Life for the newlyweds was tough. With World War II just beginning, the economy was struggling. The US was just coming out of the Depression, and still even men with work like Fuad struggled to make ends meet. The stress of the situation put pressure on Fuad, who was starting to show signs of a struggling mind with each passing day. According to his wife, Fuad very quickly began to withdraw from society, missing work and spending days stuck to his bed.
Which, let's face it, is a massive sign of depression, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah,
I mean, if you can't get out of bed in the morning, you don't want to do anything. Because I find that, there's been times where I've been a little depressed. And it's impossible to do anything.
There's no motivation there.
But because your brain is so busy and so full that you could put on the TV and sit there and watch, but you're not going to take in any of it. You could put a book in front of you and try and read, but you're not going to take any of it in. You're just going to keep scanning. The amount of times I'd try and listen to podcasts and stuff like that to try and ease my mind, and I'd be halfway through and I haven't heard a word this fucker said.
It's like when you're reading, and
all this again,
bounces off your brain nearly. Yeah.
That's it. And then we're talking about 1939, seeking medical help for mental issues as a man, especially in 1939, was not going to fucking happen.
Oh yeah, if you're a woman, you'd probably been thrown into the old.
Here's a dildo.
Asylum.
You'll be fine. That was a little earlier.
Oh yeah, for the wandering room.
But that's what they did to help them when they were feeling blue as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, and going through their womanly hysteria, I believe they call it.
Still haven't found a cure for that hysteria, have we? On top of that, then I suppose, and it must be a way for your brain to try and maybe push you away from the negative thoughts. He started to get obsessive about religion, but not any regular religion, just specifically ancient Egyptian religion. So he's looking at his past and looking into what made him what he is. I suppose you might get that way, wouldn't you? I mean, if you were having like an existential crisis or something like that, and you're going to start looking at, your history, where you come from, what made you the man you are today, and all that. So I can see why that would be an okay thing. I mean, I did the exact same thing.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you did the exact same
I
thing.
started looking into all our culture and our Celtic roots and our Celtic pagan fucking religion and all
But
that
you're
stuff.
of sound mind.
Was I? Am I? Really?
Well, you're fooling me.
Gotta get my blood feast ready. I think this starts as a way to procrastinate a little bit, by kind of focusing in on an obsession to avoid the real issues as well, but this obsession quickly takes a dark turn when Fuad begins to talk to people who aren't really there.
Yes.
So that is a problem. That's a definite escalation in the mental
flag.
health fucking issues, It's all fine when you're just sitting in a corner crying. Once you start talking to someone that's not there about you sitting in the corner crying, no, we got a problem.
Shit hits the fan then. According to Louise, at first it was just small things, like we said, missing work from being bedridden. Then he stopped sleeping and spending his nights with his head in old books and taking notes. At first, Louise believed it was a stress thing and that he would eventually tire himself out, get a good night's sleep, and be back to his usual self. But as the days turned to weeks and the weeks to months, it became obvious to her that Fuad was only getting worse.
Yeah, what started as a low mumbling to himself as he worked alone in his study began to turn into loud arguments between him and an unknown entity only visible to himself. So yeah, that's when it gets worse again.
When
you
you're
start
arguing
with yourself. This, added with crazy chanting in their backyard throughout the night under moonlight, led the Ramses family to an intervention. And that generally leads, when you're going a little bit wacky woo, that generally leads to some incarceration, doesn't it? You're going to be going away with the men in white coats for a while. No, when you're at this point, in modern times, when you're at this point, that sounds like a great idea. It's a good way. You go in, you get to talk, you get time to yourself, you get to unwind, get rid of that stress, talk to someone, get all that shit out of you.
Quick.
But we're talking again about the late 30s, early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen what mental institutions look like in the 80s. And I can't imagine they were much better in the 40s.
No, there was this, I can't think of her name. She was a journalist. There's a movie after coming out about her lately. What the feck was her name? But she decided to go undercover. So she got herself committed to an insane asylum. And I don't think it went too well for her. I think she found it hard to get back out again.
Well, of course
this was like the early 20th century. Yeah. What was her name? I can't think.
It's terrifying. I've always been afraid in my life. That's the thing about the end of Shutter Island that freaked me out. Because I know people shit in Shutter Island.
Oh, no, I fucking love Shutter Island.
But when it gets to the end and he's like, I'm not crazy. I'm here investigating. No, you're crazy. And I always said it to anyone that would talk to me about the subject. I'd be like, the worst thing you can do when someone tells you you're crazy, say, I'm not crazy.
No.
The more you say I'm not crazy, the crazier you fucking sound.
You just accept it.
I'm not crazy. I swear I'm not crazy. And then the more people are telling you you're crazy, the more frustrated you're getting, the more frantic you're getting.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I'm not crazy. But you are. But at this stage, they had gotten him into a nice enough place where he did get the therapy he needed. And through time of talking things out and the right medication and the right diagnosis, they realized he had some form of schizophrenia. Now, I don't know if they were diagnosing that to the degree they are now, where it's, they can break down the type of schizophrenia that it is. I mean, I was looking up a few things. I think I've lost it now, but there's a lot of different types. But this guy had a certain form of schizophrenia and he was medicated. I would assume later on you could definitely say it's like personality disorder with schizophrenia.
Yeah.
But so schizophrenia, and he was medicated, and after a predetermined amount of time and they discussed it and talked it out and all that stuff, he was released back to his family.
And while Fuad was in hospital recovering, his father Amin, who had been quite ill for some time, succumbed to his ailments, passing away peacefully in his home. Dahlia, seeing the US as a cursed country, which had left her husband in bad health due to their financial constraints, and her son mentally broken, wanted to go home, back to Egypt to see her days out, and she wanted Fuad and Louise to come with her.
Probably not a bad idea, and that's what Louise thought too. She said it's a good idea, seeing as the US was always a whisper away from entering the war. This is, again, World War II time, and Egypt was a neutral country She thought the familiar and peaceful surroundings of his motherland would help ease Fuad's strain, thinking his obsession with ancient Egyptian beliefs might be a cry for his natural surroundings, which makes sense.
Makes sense.
You know, he wanted to go home. He wanted to go from where he was from, especially when you're lifted out of Egypt, brought to this country that's supposed to be so much better, and you're dropped into a depression.
Yeah.
And then directly after that depression, they kick off World War II, and there's a chance you could be fucking conscripted, you know? So, fuck that shit. I'm going back to Egypt too.
And so the Fuads moved home to Ramses even.
The Ramses, yes. The Fuads.
Taking what little they owned back to Egypt with plans to start fresh. Little did they know that fortune would not follow them home, and the motherland would hold just as much struggle for them as the US had. But a little ray of light was to come and would be enough to keep Fuad on his medication and in regular therapy. On the 14th of December 1942, the couple's one and only child was born, a girl that they named Penny. I like that name.
It is, but it's not really an Egyptian name. You kind of stand out in Egypt with a name like Penny, wouldn't you?
Maybe Louise picked the name.
What's their money? Can we call her that? I don't know.
Rupees? Or is that India?
She was to be Fuad's lucky charm. That's why they called her that. Oh, well, I just explained it to myself. You know the saying, see a penny, pick it up, and all day long you have good luck? Mm-hmm. So every morning before he did anything else, Fuad would lift his lucky charm up for a hug and a kiss before continuing on with his day. So pick a penny up. All day long you'd have good luck. So even in Egypt, he was still in the service industry. Because it's all he kind of knew at this stage, you know? And it's not like you can just go back up and pick back up your farm where you left off. A lot of money and work involved in getting that back up and going. So he sticks with the service industry where he's good. He knew what he was doing there. He was apparently a good cook. He was good at dealing with the pressures of a kitchen. There was no problem there. The problem seemed to be laying outside of his career more than anything. He was mentally shaky, but he kind of stayed on top of it with all the meds. So there was points where, because again, the medication probably wouldn't have been grade A either at this point in history. You know, it was hit or miss. And if he missed the day then as well on top of it, that could cause problems. And with World War II raging on, you also have the problem of distribution. The stuff that the medication itself is struggling to get to Egypt on time, so there isn't the supplies there to constantly keep him up. So he had periods where he was up and down, but nothing to the degree of what happened in America, where he was seeing things and talking to things and getting completely tunnel visioned on one subject to the point where he had abandoned all his responsibilities, you know? So he's doing okay, but he is under pressure, and that kind of puts pressure then on the family and on his marriage. And because you have to imagine, especially for Louise, she's after picking up and moving to a country she's never really lived in, where she doesn't know the language, doesn't know the culture a whole pile outside of what she's seen from Fuad and his family. But again, are you getting the whole thing there? Because Fuad is working constantly between trying to provide for the family, working on his apprenticeship to try and become a professional chef. And then on top of that, you have his ailing father, you have his mother to take care of. There was a lot there.
Dead at this stage.
This is later. I'm just talking about earlier on. And then she moves over. So I'm just saying when she first met the family, she's not going to get the real kind of authentic fucking Egyptian experience from this family, because they're under too much pressure to be fucking happy and doing their usual kind of cultural thing. And then to make matters even worse was Dalia passed away in this time period. And Fuad was very close to his mother. So this was a big hit in him again. And obviously when you're already on shaky ground with your mental health, little knocks or big knocks like this can really take its toll on you, you know, and affect you going forward. The service industry had been good to Fuad, and he enjoyed the work. He especially loved to experiment with cooking, taking established dishes and putting his own Egyptian spin on it. Which he would do again later.
That he did. And like most foodies, he wanted to ply his trade in the cuisine mecca of the world, Paris, France. With his parents both passed and his current career kind of at a brick wall, Louise made the suggestion that one more fresh start might be what the family needed to keep life on track and to help Fuad stay on the right mental path. The plan was to scrap every penny they could together, to scrape every penny they could get together even, move to the Paris suburbs and open an authentic American-style family diner. I'm so bad with the word diner. It's a pure like blonde joke as well. It's definitely diner. But first they'd need to go back to Miami for a year or two to take care of Louise's aging mother, who had recently been diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer and had been given a short timeline to live.
But medical science isn't perfect, and a year or two turned into 11, with the Ramses being stuck in Miami from 1950 to 1961. But really, are you going to want to go to France in the late 40s, early 50s? Are they not a bit busy there? I don't know.
Well, no, they would have been liberated in 1945.
Yeah. But, I mean, would they not be rebuilding itself after the damage done in World War II and the Nazi occupation?
Yeah, I think they did all right for them. I'm not too sure. It's in my head that they did all right for themselves. I know there was mad garbage strikes in the 60s, I'm pretty sure, where they just stopped collecting garbage and the streets are pretty full of crap. But it was 1961 when Louise's mother finally passed, leaving her own family a small nest egg in her will. It was enough to get them started in Paris. Along with all that, Penny had been accepted to college there as well. So finally, the Ramses were off to France and on their way to their dream of owning and running their own little American diner in Paris.
No, I mean, the dream is nice. Mm-hmm. It is nice. You think of what you want, you hope it's going to work out. But when it comes to especially food industry, there's going to be a bit of work involved. Yeah. And even like with the food industry, you'll notice like, even if you get like an early kind of boom of people coming to your restaurant or diner in this case, that'll all fizzle down after a while, you know, of the kind of, the shine will be gone off it. People will have come, they'll have seen, and now it's just a case of you got to sell them on your food, you know? Oh, yeah. So this caused early financial issues for them because, as you say, they only had a small nest egg from the inheritance from Louise's mother. Yeah. There was no inheritance from the Ramses side, like, you know?
Yeah.
So they only had a small bit of money, so it was just enough to just get them going, especially with Penny starting college, because that's expensive too, and they had to try and pay for that at the same time. So they had no staff when they started for the first couple of years. For the entire time they were there, actually, there was no staff. It was pure family run.
Okay.
Fuad and Louise were running it to the most part, and Penny was in and out helping as best she could in between college. But it got so bad that they couldn't buy in fresh food. They had to buy everything frozen and keep everything frozen. Like the meat, everything was frozen, which would again cause problems in the likes of Paris, where everything's expected to be perfect, you know?
You're going to be able to tell if your meat was frozen or fresh.
They're I won't say snobby, but they're big about it. It's very particular about it and all that.
Yeah,
kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas you and me might just be like, oh, it's fine. You know,
it's edible.
They're going to send it back. Exactly. You know, they're going to poo-poo with.
No,
that's not a French talk, right? Poo-poo.
We were talking about Rue de Pipi last night.
Huh?
We were talking about Rue de Pipi
on
I'm Playing with Bones. Yeah.
And if they're willing to name their streets like that, you can only imagine what they're going to say about your shit
about
food.
Your shit food.
Poo-poo. I pee on this. Anyway, with business being a little slow and with Penny's college to pay for, it forced Fuad to take a night job as well. So he's working in a restaurant all day. He's leaving a little earlier, and Louise is picking up then the kind of end of the evening shift with Penny kind of filling in here and there. But he was forced to take another job. Now, if he's going to take another job, he decided he might try and get something he liked, or at least something that would keep him interested. The job he didn't like, but the surroundings were of interest to him. He got a night watchman job in the Musée de l'Homme, or Museum of Mankind. Yes. And he specifically liked it. It was an anthropology museum. It is an anthropology museum in Paris, France.
There. Yeah.
And I suppose he liked it because he'd spend an awful lot of time around the Egyptian exhibits. Yeah. Couldn't think of the word there for a minute. Literally, as I thought of it, exhibit, the rapper just bounced up into my fucking head. It was like, pimp my ride. Anyway, so he's happy there because he gets to spend his night kind of looking and exploring the Egyptian stuff. And I suppose maybe it would maybe help with any homesickness or any kind of want to be back in Egypt. It kind of would help that kind of feeling by being around stuff you're familiar with. I would assume that if we were in a foreign area, we'd happily sit in the Irish area and just be like, feels like home. See, we'd get security jobs in pubs. Feels like home.
So you shouldn't be able to have a pint.
Huh?
A security couldn't have a pint.
I can have a pint at the end of the night.
At the end of the night. Yeah.
Just hunt everyone out. On top of that, so he didn't really give a shit about this because Fuad wasn't exactly a social butterfly either. He wasn't one for having a lot of fucking friends. I mean, so far, we've had him in Egypt, Miami, and Egypt. And so far, I have not mentioned any friends outside of his partner, Louise.
And his daughter.
Yeah, well. So he has no social life. So it doesn't really bother him. Like I said, he's very alone. He liked being alone. He liked doing his own thing. He even didn't mind the idea of working the diner by himself as a family.
Yeah.
But he understood that more staff meant he was being successful. So he knew that when they couldn't afford, whatever about choosing to hire staff or not being able to afford staff or any extras or any investment in his business was bothering him. So he was happy to take this job and happy to work away because he said he wasn't a big man for sleeping either.
Okay.
No, this next part, this is a bit from Louise. So she says that he was pretty good with his meds. Once they moved and they were in Paris and he'd gotten a new doctor, there was a very steady supply of meds. Actually, he was on new meds from his new doctor, stuff that was supposed to improve the situation. But this new doctor had specifically said the way his mentality is at the moment, and obviously being in a new area with new stresses and new pressure, that it was really important for him to continue taking these and to not. I mean, I know myself, I'm on a very, very mild dose of, I suppose they're antidepressants. I don't know. Because every now and again I was getting a bit pissy and I just went to the doctor. I feel shit. Like I like 2 or 3 days out of every 3 weeks or whatever, I have like a really bad fucking day. And he's like, well, here's the lowest dosage. Take them, you'll be fine. But you're warned when you're taking these kind of things, do not come off them without consulting.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Back off them. So he was kind of warned about that. And one day he accidentally dropped these pills at the sink. He kept them, because like the Americans with their little box in front of the sink, and he opened it and they spilled out in front of him and went down the fucking drain. So he's like, oh shit. But again, I know I would do the exact same thing. I'd just be like, what's a day or two? Fuck it, it'll be fine. I'll get it.
No, you can have a massive swing.
Well.
Yep. So according to Louise, it didn't take her long to realise Fuad was off the meds, noticing almost instantly the far off look in his eyes and that he seemed almost lost in his thoughts around the diner. At first, she put this down to putting in long hours in the diner before working all night in the museum, but something inside her told her things weren't right. And going off that gut instinct, she checked Fuad's pill supply, only to find that they were all gone. When she confronted Fuad, he gave her the excuse you just outlined above, stating he saw no harm in missing a few days until the next refill was due.
Louise did not agree. And she told Fuad to go get the pills replaced ASAP. Their relationship had been doing a lot better since Fuad began treatment, and she was terrified that he would slip back out of reality with the absence of his mind-saving pills. What she didn't know was that even those first few unmedicated days had already been enough to let old thoughts begin to creep in. Now, those thoughts were basically, he's starting to trip out a little bit. He's going to work and he is thinking he's seeing things moving. He's thinking he's reading stuff and the words are getting jumbled and he can't, they're coming up looking more hieroglyphic and stuff like that. And he's starting to freak out a little bit. And he's particularly after getting kind of locked into this story that he had been following, kind of started researching just before his pills had went missing. He had started researching it out of interest because he was around the museum all night. But no, because that's what's in his brain when he's off the medication, it starts to become an issue. And he starts to believe that he's seeing the goddess Ishtar around the museum with him. And he's talking to her. Now, when he was studying Ishtar, he realized she's the goddess of fertility, love, war, and sexy time. All right. The story of Ishtar is kind of an interesting one. So she was, like I said, goddess of love and sex. She was well up for it. She was, DTF. Oh, yeah. But only with particular people. She had high standards and you had to do certain stuff to get her interest. In particular, you could prepare what was called a blood feast. And this one man, Tammuz, I've been struggling with that all day. I keep forgetting. I was calling him Tomo there earlier on.
Tomo.
I got to change that in next week's script. So Tammuz was mad for Ishtar. And he wanted to get with the goddess, but she had no interest because he hadn't proven himself. Mm-hmm. So Tammuz goes out and he murders 7 boys and 7 girls. And then he prepared a giant feast, which he fed to the townspeople who didn't know any difference. This was enough to show Ishtar how much he loved her, and she then took him as a lover. That's the myth. It worked. Yeah, that's the myth to the story.
Okay.
Fuad believes at this point he must do the same.
Of course you do.
So it's safe to say he has, again, and probably more than any other time, lost his fucking marbles. Yep. By the time this is all over, Louise will be praying for the time he was out the back chanting to the fucking moon.
Yep. And it didn't take Fuad long to kick into action either, as he spotted a couple inside the library where he was studying up on Ishtar. And the couple were there as regularly as he was. So he was confident that day that if he left to prepare and came back the next day, they'd be an easy first target or offering to Ishtar, as he himself viewed it to be.
Yeah, it's believed that he did return the next day and began to stalk his prey, watching and waiting for the couple to leave so he could follow them and pounce.
Yes. The couple, Christian Weiser and Julia Diesner, were students who had been having a study date to prepare for upcoming exams. Fuad followed them to Julia's apartment, a short walk away from the library. There, after Christian had said his goodbye, Fuad jumped into action, sneaking up behind Christian in the darkened hallway of the apartment block and knocking him unconscious. He then rang the bell of Julia's flat. Julia, thinking it was Christian returning for one more goodbye kiss, was shocked to see Fuad standing there in a panic. Fuad told Julia that he'd come across this young man passed out in the hall and needed to call an ambulance. Julia, upset at the sight of her unconscious boyfriend, ran to Christian's aid only to suffer the same fate as he did.
It's believed after he had them subdued, he loaded them into his car and brought them back to his diner, where he had a diner dungeon. He had switched up the stock room and kind of preparation room as, well, a preparation room for something completely different. At that point, he starts locking that door and he's not letting the family in there anymore. He told his wife and Penny that he was preparing a surprise for them and that they would find out maybe the end of the week what it was going to be. And it was going to be a special meal that he was preparing from. Inside, really, he had chains hanging from the ceilings where he would hook his, I suppose, ingredients up to the ceiling. So in this first case, you're kind of thinking Christian and Julia are hanging there gagged and he is essentially torturing them before he murders them. So I mean, I don't know how that works in this scenario, why he thinks he has to torture them to get to that. I mean, it's not in the story of Tammuz, you know. Tammuz just killed the kids and fucking made the dinner. So but
the man's schizophrenic, so I mean,
yeah, that's a good excuse. Let's leave him off.
No, I don't mean to let's leave him off. I mean, it's kind of obviously why he elaborated on the actual.
Later, they would figure out, no, it was a mess. By the end of this whole case, it was very hard to distinguish who had been killed what fucking way, you know? Or whose body was this body and whose part was this part. Because again, it's the 60s. DNA ain't a fucking thing yet.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
All they could really go on is there's hairs here, there's fingerprints here. The hairs definitely belong to a boy, possibly that boy, but fingerprints are kind of.
How can you tell if hair belongs to a boy?
I have no idea how they do it. I mean, I'm not a forensic scientist.
Sex the hair.
But isn't that what they used to do early on? Before proper DNA, it was all hair and fingerprints that they worked off of.
Oh yeah, but they'd kind of match hair to the color of the hair, the density of the hair and stuff like that.
Definitely a blonde.
Definitely thick hair.
That narrows it down to a couple of million. We're on them.
Can you imagine?
So it's believed that Christian and Julia were murdered here. Thinking maybe, I'm not 100% sure. Do you know what parts he might have taken?
From who?
From the victims here, Amy.
Oh, no. I was just wondering which one. Was there a specific question in mind?
I'm not 100%.
Well, despite the fact that nearly all the bodies of his victims had been severely dismembered, later investigation determined that the eyes of Christian Weiser were used in the blood feast, but unfortunately, Julia's body parts couldn't be identified amongst the viscera that was Fuad's ancient meal, although her blood was mixed in with the sauce.
Okay, so she's a part of the special sauce. It's fine.
Ew.
Magic sauce. You're never going to guess the secret ingredient. It's blood, Fuad. It's always fucking blood. There was also a rumor. This hasn't been confirmed, or well, there's no one there to deny it anymore, so I don't know. But remember how I said that Fuad was having problems with getting in fresh meat?
Mm-hmm.
Well, bodies are big fucking things, and this man's going to go through a lot of bodies, usually for specific parts to make the blood feast. He's not looking to like. He could have made the blood feast very quick with one person, but he has to sacrifice more people. So as you said, Christian's eyes were found in here. We know that, sorry, what was her name again?
Julia.
Julia's blood was found inside here. So there's still a lot of human to get rid of that's going to stink up the joint if you don't get rid of it. And you're working in a diner, people are going to notice and probably not come.
Mm-hmm.
So Fuad might have possible way of disposing, because they've never found the rest of the bodies properly, just bar what was there for the blood feast. There's rumors and possibilities that he might have been feeding the leftovers to customers as meat. So at this time, it was said that Fuad started, that he wasn't doing this beforehand, but it was something he used to do back when he was in Miami, was when he was experimenting with meals. He'd come out and he'd offer, he'd be like, all right, this is the special I'm making today. I want you to try it out. And he was doing this with customers that were coming in. He was like, they'd order something. And then he'd be like, oh, you want the steak? Well, I have a very special steak tonight. It's a really perfect steak. You're going to love it. Let me make it the way I make it. I'll give it you half price.
Yeah.
And then he'd sell them the steak and they'd eat it and they'd love it apparently. But some people said that he could never put their finger on what the meat was. And he was always very secretive about saying it's secret ingredients. I can't tell you. But yeah, the rumor was, and the thought process afterwards. But you know yourself, with cases that are this crazy and this fucking nasty and gory and disgusting, people are going to fall, especially in a cannibal case. They're going to fall into, did he sell it to us? Did we eat it?
Yeah.
Because that has happened before.
Oh, it has. Yeah. And you'd think if you were planning a blood feast, like there might be signs, like acting a little strange around the family and being distracted or paranoid, but not Fuad. According to both Louise and Penny, Fuad was like a man reborn. The once feeble and quiet man was suddenly full of pep and confidence, and despite holding down 2 jobs on very little sleep, he seemed to be constantly bursting with energy.
I would assume that has something to do with kind of depression as well, isn't it? Because you're
ups and downs.
Yeah, well, I doubt he's in depression. Well, no, we said it was schizophrenia, didn't we? Not depression. So, I mean, again, you can get manic, you can get wild, but it sounds like he's kind of in more control. Like he's, like I said earlier, tunnel vision, knows what he wants, knows what he has to do, and he's going to go out and get it.
Yep.
And I suppose if you have a sexy Egyptian goddess following you around that no one else can see, cheering you on, you're probably going to feel pretty good about yourself.
Probably.
You know?
Yeah.
All I got to do is kill a few more, and this girl's going to get me laid.
Yeah, never mind about your wife.
Maybe it'll be a ghost threesome.
Yeah.
Ghost threesome. Initially, with no witness, Christian Weiser and Julia Disner's disappearance was being treated as a missing persons case, with some police dismissing the investigation, simply saying the couple probably had run off and eloped. It wouldn't be until later, when more people showed up lost, that the case would be reclassified as a possible double homicide.
Yep. And you've already pointed out that Fuad wasn't exactly a social butterfly, so his pool of direct victims was pretty low, and he disliked the lack of control he held with faceless victims. The way his mind rationalized it, if he picked those closer to him, he could be close to any investigation and get all the inside tips. He even believed that he may be able to manipulate the information going to the police to improve his chances of finishing the feast before anyone became wise to his culpability.
It's just a complete opposite to what other serial killers do. But other serial killers get caught, so maybe Fuad has some thought, some good ideas. No, he doesn't. It's terrible. Stupid.
And it was for this reason that he set his eyes on Penny's growing circle of friends. The group regularly hung out at Fuad's diner, giving him the inside track on their whereabouts and goings on.
And that's how he learned they were all going to hang out that night at an old theatre close by. He planned to grab one of the group so as to continue his feast preparation. So the next bit is kind of according to what Penny has to say on the subject, and that's the death of Matilda Evans and Lilienschwarz. Because he went for 2 for 1 on this one. He went there looking for one, but saw a deal. Buy one, get one free.
Bug off.
So Matilda Evans, we kind of have a bit of a witness for that. Not proper, but she was talking to a man by the name of I should have had this. Clement Capet. Capet. Here, you're better at the French pronunciations than I am. He was talking to her at the time, and he said he got knocked out from behind, and when he woke up, she was lying there with her neck cut open.
Yikes.
Lilienschwarz, and this is a nasty one, and we will return to this again next week, had her tongue ripped out. We don't know how she did it, but how it was done, but by the looks of things, there seem to be bite marks around her mouth, so there is a theory that Fuad might have just ripped this out with his teeth.
Yeah. I don't know about human tongue, but I'm told that tongue is an alright meat.
Yeah, but this isn't like
right.
The tongue we can
It's
this
like
is
the
tongue
whole
from
thing
here
that goes back down.
all the way fucking down. Like it ripped out from the stem is the only way I can describe it, to be honest with you. An investigation was started. But they weren't seen as serious suspects in this because obviously, again, like, Penny's very close to this group, and where they were and all this kind of stuff, it was seen as, look, any crazy person could have broken into this theater you're in, and it's an abandoned kind of shitty old theater. These things happen. But Officer Roland Fatih, he was sent to talk to the family and ask them questions about where they were that night, what they knew, just try and fill them out. And Roland here, he's just a beat cop, uniformed cop. So it's just kind of a go
gathering
get the info for us, and when the detectives will sort it out.
Yeah.
No, this is where things get a bit hairy and kind of fucks Louise over a little bit later.
Okay.
Is Louise lied for Fuad.
Yes.
When the officer was questioning him, Fuad claimed to have been at home with Louise the entire time the kids were at the theater.
So Fuad claimed it first.
Mm-hmm. When Louise was questioned on that fact, she agreed. He had been home with her the entire time. He most definitely was not home with her the entire time. And this is something that will come back to bite her on the arse later when she had to try and deny any involvement in all of this kind of shit.
Probably do interviews separately.
Huh?
They should probably do them separately.
Again, this is the 60s. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Now, in the meantime, there was another kid killed close to Fuad's diner. And that was a homeless kid by the name of Giole Viola. And no one really knew what happened to him for a long time. He just went fucking missing. Wasn't a murder close. There was an abduction close. My apology. He had actually last been seen leaving Fuad's diner.
Oh.
Which kind of helped Fuad's case later, because when witnesses spoke up about seeing the kid, it was leaving the diner, not going in and not coming back out again.
Or being dragged in.
Mm-hmm. His penis would be found in Fuad's blood feast broth later on. That's all they ever found of that kid, and that's how they were able to eventually identify him later on.
I can imagine that'd be really tough. Comes across as a tough kind of meat.
I do not know. I've never chewed on a penis before.
Neither have I.
No. Yeah. Anyway.
You said yeah as if you were kind of.
Do you know what I find weird about this case though, right? And it kind of carries over to next week too, and it's a coincidence in both situations. But Fuad does this twice. This is the first attempt. The cop, Roland, was started flirting with Penny.
Oh.
And apparently they started a little thing around this point. And I mean, it's got a good one for the grandkids later. How did you and mommy meet? Well, grandma's friends were brutally murdered. And we met while I was questioning her about it. But so they were kind of flirting and doing their own bits and pieces, and they actually went out once in the middle of the investigation, like the night after her friends had been murdered.
I can't work out if that would be a good thing or a bad thing for Fuad. Would he want to encourage it, or would he want the cop far away even?
I would assume close by, because especially in this scenario, because this isn't even just like close by as in like he's going to come and ask you questions and you can figure out what they know and what they don't know. This is, my daughter is right next to. But again, this instance would hurt Penny's case later when people started asking questions about family involvement in this blood feast.
Okay, yeah.
No, I didn't explain either earlier on when I was talking about the Tammuz story, and I called it the blood feast. It is called a blood feast. It's like in Egyptian and Sumerian text about the blood feast. That's what they called the murder of all these kids into the bucket and feed the parents. But it was called a blood feast.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the ritual that goes with this. It's the name of the ritual that he is trying to do at the moment. We know of another 2 murders.
Mm-hmm.
Not long. No, you have to remember all this happens like in the space of like a fucking week and a half. So he is bang, 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 bang every night. Now everyone is saying at this point that Fuad is walking around like fucking king of the castle.
Yeah.
The cat that got the cream.
Nice.
He is smooth. He is cool. And this is out of character for him, because Fuad was usually a quiet, kind of jumpy kind of guy. You know, he kind of asked him a question like, what, me?
Suppose it's kind of like a placebo effect.
Sounds like he's constantly anxious about something. But now he's walking around like fucking, like the Nutty Professor. He's walking around like buddy, not that. What was his name again? What was his name when he was fat? I'm trying to think of his mother fucking screaming his name and I can't.
Oh, is it begin with an M? Okay, I have to.
I feel like it starts with a C. Anyway, another woman goes missing in the area. They found her car broken down about, what is it?
Sherman Clump. It was in the back of my head somewhere. All right.
Anyway, Ines Schaefer, and she was a budding model. Starting to have a bit of a career. She was starting to be known, so she was noticed when she went missing. And she was leaving some function she was at, and her car broke down. And she went into the diner after hours, knocked on the diner door. Fuad happened to be in there. She went in and asked, could she use the phone?
Okay.
Fuad said, no problem. He said, you know what? I'll call him for you. I'll get breakdown on here. I know a guy. He'll be out here in like 10 minutes. He'll fix your car right up. Phone records would show that Fuad did not make any phone call at this time, even though he must have feigned it for her benefit. The doors were locked when people came by later, so he must have locked her inside there. But again, parts of her remains were found in the dungeon because this is getting closer to the blood feast. He wouldn't have had time to butcher this and hand it out as food, you know?
Yeah.
So Ines Schaefer's, most of her body was found inside in that
soup cauldron.
No. Well, bits of it were in the cauldron. But her actual, the remains of her body, because he only took like a little bit, like, you know? I mean, at this point, it must have been a blood thing as well, because when they found her, it seemed like she had a huge bite right in her neck. So he literally ripped at the artery in her neck, you know? And so it must have been blood he was looking for.
Yeah.
In the same room, which would have been the preparation room, her body was found, and the body of Ina Marie Tams, who was a sex worker. She had been strangled to death, but slices of her butt meat had been taken off.
Okay.
So he had sliced her like a fucking Christmas ham. You know?
Yeah.
And taken butt meat off her.
Nice.
Wonder what butt meat would taste like.
Not as tough as the penis, I'd say.
You sound like a person who's experienced them both.
Well, no, you're just thinking about it. As in, like, that one's kind of muscly, but that one's kind of soft. So I assume it just holds true when they're both cooked.
Fuad takes Eat My Shorts to a whole new level.
Feeling that something wasn't right and feeling Fuad was hiding something from her, Louise and Penny both confronted Fuad, who told the girls that he had a surprise for them and later he would tell them everything over a giant and special feast.
Yes. So, here's the fun part, right? Because we're getting to the big meal here.
Mm-hmm.
What Fuad expects to happen after the feast.
Okay.
So the belief is, to him, that literally directly after the girls have eaten and he's basically cleared off the whole feast, she should come into existence again. And when she does, she'll take him as her, I don't know, king. I don't know.
Consort?
What would be a god's partner called? What would you call a god's partner? Would he become a god in that sense? Would he be elevated?
Know.
I don't know what Fuad was thinking, but either way, it involved him and Ishtar hooking up.
Yeah, I'd say you'd say consort.
God, a man will do anything to get his dick wet, won't he?
Well, if it's with a goddess.
Yeah, but I've seen pictures of his wife. She wasn't bad looking here. She's a good looking woman.
Ah,
Even for what in her early 70s.
must be.
Anyway.
No, she'd be older than that.
I don't know. I'll look it up after. Anyway. After these two girls, he had almost everything he needed for the feast. Now, all he was missing was one more ingredient and some appetizers. Also, he wasn't happy leaving loose ends at the theatre. So he was worried because obviously he was worried Clement might have seen him. And there was another guy who had been there with the girls named Matisse. So if Clement or Matisse remembered anything from the night, he could have his dinner interrupted, and it was vital that he completed the ritual from beginning to end.
And with that, Fuad began to stalk his next victims, following Matisse to the hospital where he was going to meet Clement, where he was discharged from the hospital after his close call with Fuad only 2 nights before. Fuad followed the pair as they took a bottle of booze and headed for a local park and lake, determined to drown their sorrows and talk and try and process what happened to their little group a few nights previous.
Yeah. And they were there for what is believed to have been a short amount of fucking time. No one knows particularly. People saw them going in. Again, no one saw them leave. But judging by how much time Fuad would have had this night to prepare everything and get ready, and from when his party was busted up, it had to be a relatively short amount of time that he did all this in.
Okay.
Clement's body was found in the park. The back of his head had been caved in and part of his brain was missing.
Yikes.
Mm-hmm. Matisse wasn't found until later. He was attacked and sedated and brought back to the diner.
Alive.
Mm-hmm. So that's a strange. Well, it's not a strange one. I suppose he's brought people back there alive. The last 2 girls were alive when they got back there. But yeah, this is a bit of a strange one that he didn't, especially under the time constraints and pressure he was under, not pick off the body he wanted. But there was a method to his madness.
Maybe he felt shortchanged with the torture and needed to bring somebody back to get a bit of that in.
Well, what he did later would definitely constitute as torture of this young fella.
At this point, Fuad was nowhere on the investigating police's radar. Only Officer Fatih had any suspicion at all that Fuad was acting strangely, and with his interest in Penny growing, he stayed close to the diner, feeling in his gut that something just wasn't quite right.
See, this is an important point because this guy seems to be walking around with bodies in broad daylight. You have to think, if there was any suspicion on him at all, he'd be watched closely by the cops waiting for him to slip up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, though, outside of Fahey, no one was watching, and because of his low rank and lack of evidence, that was unlikely to change anytime soon. They weren't buying Rollins. You should watch this guy. Shit, it's like, shut the fuck up and go back out in direct traffic, will you?
Yeah.
You know?
His meal complete, Fuad gathered his family, offering them a drink to start the night. A drink Fuad had spiked with a sedative to put them to sleep while he set up the table for their feast.
The sedative was only one drug used on the women that night. While they were out, Fuad forcibly made the women consume a highly dangerous narcotic known as Devil's Breath to give them the right attitude and appetite for the meal He had worked so hard to prepare for them. And of course, Ishtar. So what is devil's breath? You know more about this shit than I do.
So scopolamine
She's
is
an awful
derived.
devil's breath fucking drug head over here every night. Where's my devil's breath? I can't sleep without it.
Wait till I tell you how many I've killed. So scopolamine is derived from the seeds of the baracaro tree, primarily found in South America. And in small doses, it has some legitimate medical applications, such as treating nausea and the motion sickness. It is thought that the indigenous peoples of South America once took it for hallucinogenic properties, and it was wielded by shamans for various rites and ceremonies. In modern times, however, it's gained notoriety for far more sinister reasons. While the powdered form is tasteless and odorless, scopolamine is a potent drug that can disorientate and incapacitate users and lead to frightening hallucinations. This can make it a discreet tool for malevolent purposes, particularly as it can erase memory, making users highly impressionable and even paralyze them physically. In South America, particularly Colombia, where it's known as burundanga, there are countless reports of users being coerced into carrying out criminal acts after being spiked with the drug.
So remember that next time you're in court. It was the Brundanga. Your Honor. Wasn't me.
Inadvertently, under the mind control effects of the drug, these victims have been raped, convinced to commit violent crimes, empty their bank accounts, and even had their organs stolen. It does sound like a date rape drug.
A bit more extreme, though, I would say.
Date rape drugs can paralyze you as well.
But can you like trick people into doing crimes for you while they're on date rape jobs?
No, I think it kind of knocks you out.
Take this Rohypnol and go rob the post office.
Well, no. Rohypnol was originally used for like lumbar punctures and all that because you had to be awake for it, but they didn't want you to remember it because it's so fucking painful.
Well, then I would say devil's breath is probably, the right dosage will pretty much do anything for that shit. So that was probably the better option. And that theory is pretty much proven fact by this case.
Yep.
So the blood feast. What happened? Louise and Penny are very sketchy on this. Now, like I said, after the fact, they were locked up for a portion of time while they tried to prove their fucking innocence in the case.
Oh, yeah.
But they claim that while they could pretty much kind of... They get flashes of what went on. They can get flashes of them eating with a lot of red sauce all over the place. They get flashes of certain stuff they said to them. But to the most part, all they know is they were eating whatever was being handed to them.
Okay.
That turned out to be
people.
Everything that was in the blood feast. Yeah. So all the bits and pieces of victims.
Yeah.
On top of that, we were talking about Matisse earlier on. And what was it, Matisse? Yeah.
Yeah.
And why he was brought back. Well, remember when I started off, I said he had to clean up any loose ends, and he had one ingredient to get and some appetizers. So the ingredient was the brains.
Oh.
Matisse was the appetizers. Using the devil's breath, he paralyzed Matisse, tied him down, but paralyzed him, but gave him a dosage to a point where he was aware of what was going on.
Okay.
He just couldn't stop it or talk. And they started to carve away at him too. Yeah. So he died of blood loss. Now, in the meantime, Officer Roland was supposed to meet up with Penny, and when she didn't turn up, he went to the diner to see what was going on. When he got there, the diner was closed, which was odd because this was, their usual peak hours to make fucking money, and he was worried. Like he said, he just had this cop's instinct that something was fucking wrong. He had been around this family. He knew something was wrong. And then when he started adding up the things, it was like, well, people close to Penny are dying. People are saying the Fuad's acting a bit funny. He's in and out of the place. And now they're locked up on a peak hour. So this is a bit fucking strange. And he claims he heard something inside. And that's what gave him the reasoning to break in to see what was, and investigate to see what was going on. So he smashes in the door and makes his way around the place trying to fucking find what's going on.
Okay.
What he finds is Penny and Louise in the storeroom gobbling up fucking human flesh. Fuad had moved into the preparation room to get a few more bits and pieces when he heard Officer Roland making his entrance. Now, from what I have read about the description of this crime scene, he said First of all, he said the feast was laid out like a fucking banquet. Like it was nice. It looked proper and it was a very official thing. But he said when he got into the storeroom where Fuad had, or the preparation room where Fuad had been gutting these women and fucking putting bits and pieces and preparing the food, basically, that was just a massacre of blood, body parts and blood and organs and bits and pieces of everybody all over the fucking place. So when Fuad heard the noise in the front room and knew that the cops had got in and knew that the whole fucking thing was rumbled at this point, he got his ass out the back door and made a break for it.
Okay.
The thing about it was that confused this whole situation is cops initially didn't know for sure, despite what Officer Roland Fati was telling them, wasn't 100% sure who the fucking killer was. Was it the two women? Was it Fuad? Fuad was nowhere to be seen. Was Fuad one of the body parts that have been hacked up in pieces around here? So he had time to get the fuck out of there and move ass out of there as fast as he could and make a new start for himself somewhere else. Well, yeah,
the wife and daughter to take the blame.
Yep. He hopped right on a plane and went right back to Miami.
What an asshole.
Well, I think they still might have had a little bit of property in Miami with her mother's house. So he had somewhere to hide there for the time being. But again, this is the 60s. You're not going to be able to... you're able to move country and have no one fucking know what's going on or know of your crimes and stuff like that. To the point that you're going to see this next week when we get into it. He didn't even change his fucking name.
Nope.
Opened the fucking deli called Ramses Exotic Food. So that'll tell you this guy didn't have much to worry about once he was out of the country.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens next with that.
And we're going to leave a return to Miami until next week when we tackle the second leg of Fuad's killing spree as he slips further into homicidal, cannibalistic madness as he tries for a second time to raise the goddess Ishtar from her grave.
Awesome.
Until then, though, check out our Patreon for more great shows like the IAA bonus show, It's a Live Action, or our wrestling history show, Wrestling with Time.
Which is coming back next week. Not next Monday, not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. Yes. Also, we have Amy's history show, Playing with Bones. We've been doing kind of ancient illnesses. Well, historical illnesses.
Historical
like
cures. Historical medical mysteries.
We just did the British sweat, didn't we?
Yeah.
And this week we are doing... Did we just do the British sweat? Or was it... No, sorry.
Cures.
Medieval cures.
That's what we did.
And this week it's the Black Plague to finish out this season.
Black Death.
6 of one, half dozen of the other, really, isn't it? Why are the Black Plague and the Black Death something both different? Sounds like two rival metal bands.
The plague caused the Black Death. That's why the difference is.
All that on patreon.com/the Horrorverse Network, and there's only $5 a month with a 7-day free trial for all new subscribers. We'll be back next week with more tales from the Horrorverse. See you all next time. Same live time, same Horrorverse channel. Okay, love you. Bye-bye. Oh, and fuck Israel, fuck Trump, fuck his eyes, and free Palestine. See you later.